This gentleman changed Canadian history in this industry a couple of weeks ago with his team when they did the first $15 million bought deal with institutions. He also was the first company on the Toronto Venture Exchange. And we don't know each other yet, but what we share in common is a lake we used to go to and an Ottawa Valley that his dad was from. And he's going to tell you about, this is Mr. Bruce Linton of TWEED Marijuana Inc.
Thanks, Cori. In fact, I've enjoyed many of the presentations. I've sat through, I think, 5 or 6, and some terrific ones, really quite helpful to me. I apologize, however, I'm going to be of limited value today. And anybody who's watched TWEED knows that there's nothing I love more than a microphone. I don't know if you've ever seen anything from English language Al Jazeera, who we hosted, to the Lang O'Leary show. But we really do embrace the media, and the media have been very helpful to us. But the reason I can't be overly helpful today is that we were fortunate in that when we entered the market, we were well received, we were traded well, and quite quickly our underwriters moved to offer us a bought deal. And that's not a normal course thing for a company which is a venture listing to be offered a $15 million bought deal after trading for about 22 days. Because a bought deal says that there's an awful lot of institutional interest in what is happening, and they would like to put the stock into those hands. And when you do that, you have to file one of these, which is an inappropriately named short form prospectus. It's 27 pages, plus attachments. And you file that on CDAR, and we filed that on the 30th. And once you file that, you have to do what my lawyers have told me to do, which is not to be helpful in a public setting describing your company, which kills me. Because there's a lot I'd love to tell you. What I can do, though, is I'll walk through a couple of slides, and anyone and everyone who would like to have a discussion or question, I'm going to go in the hall after, and be happy to have a bunch of side conversations. I've had probably 10 folks approach and had great discussions up to now, and I'd love to do more of that. Well, the disclaimer, you've all read it thoroughly. I put the first page up. I told my lawyer I thought that if I was truthfully taking his advice, I would begin by reading a copy of this preliminary short form prospectus has been filed, but it would be the most boring presentation ever. So I just put a quick snap up. The company spent, I can give you one thing, we spent one evening named Can Remedy. We worked with an agency. They were a very good agency. They took quite a bit of our money in about 3 weeks and came back to us and said, your company should be called Can Remedy. Went to bed, woke up in the morning and said, I don't think we should be called Can Remedy. And so we spent another 4 weeks on becoming TWEED. And I only give you that, and we feel that we've gone quite slowly on many things. But we've tried to focus only on one thing at a time and try to do it reasonably well. And I give you the name TWEED in that a lot of people say, what's it mean? And the answer is, what would you like it to mean? Would it like to be therapeutic weed, or would you like it to be a nice, textured British fabric? If we have discussions at the side, I think you'll find TWEED hasn't done very many things perfectly, but it's done a lot of things in fairly quick succession when you think that it was only June 19th when they issued the rules. And I don't know about you, but our biggest surprise upon reviewing them was the clause that said, please build one, and then we can come inspect it. We were kind of caught off guard a little bit by that, where we thought the rules were going to say, please describe it, write it out clearly, we'll give you an A, B, or C. If you get an A, you have a license and you can go build one. So when you think June 19th to now, and we just shipped our first product earlier this week, there's been an awful lot going on. And so the name TWEED, we liked it because we thought it was reasonably memorable. I can say it was at least twice as expensive to acquire as had we just chosen the first name, but I think it's twice as good. From TWEED, there you go. So I can provide you the contacts. I wish I could tell you our story. I have at least 11 fantastic slides, but each one of them was nixed by the lawyer. So please, if you do have a question that isn't so open that I'd be giving my presentation, ask away. Otherwise, I'd be more than happy to exit the back door and have dialogue with all. Now, I'm a little worried about this guy. I agree with whatever the seat thing you were mad about. But,
my question is, in a recent interview, you or someone from your company mentioned mandatory minimums as a selling point of your company, why investors would want to invest, because your competition, your black market competition, might be facing mandatory minimum years in jail for trying to undercut you. Do you see any ethical problems with endorsing a system that inflicts suffering on harmless people as a selling point to your company?
When you presented that, when you present it that way, it certainly is. What we've tried to do is describe the rules that have been evolved without offering a view as to whether or not they're appropriate or suitable, but that we're trying to react to them. And so when people ask us what has occurred, if someone thinks that the only thing that has changed is a former chocolate factory now produces marijuana, we do need to describe to them there were at least two other aspects of that huge omnibus legislation which related to the topic of medical marijuana. The other being the method of access, and the third being the method of enforcement. I'm the guy who goes to the 100-mile Green Party diet fundraiser to the Liberal fundraiser to the Tory. I don't get involved in the decision process. I just try to make sure we follow it.
Would you be interested in maybe exchanging an activist endorsement of your company for a promise to invest in the removal of those mandatory minimums?
I would be all over that.
Okay, let's talk after.
Yeah.
Woo! Yeah.
It's a laboratory question. How does it work in terms of analytical laboratories and what you have to do from growing to get it to the customer?
So, it works slower than we expected, is the first answer. So, when the crop is harvested, in our case, we're still constructing our lab to be a certified tested lab on our premise, which means that we take a portion of the product, we send it first to a lab in New Brunswick, from Ottawa, Smith Falls. They tell us how that product looks in terms of everything from active ingredients to undesirable contents. Then you go through the final drying process, you send in another sample to New Brunswick. They take their time again and send back to us the result. If there's any requirement to deal with anything with any levels of mold, mildew, you have to take secondary steps to retest again. So one of the things that we've put in a public release was that we wish to have the capital necessary to build a lab facility on our own premise, because the shuttling back and forth across the eastern portion of the country doesn't add to a very efficient time turnaround.
You know, the thing about that, though, can you, like in mining, you can have your own lab.
Yeah.
But you still need a third party. Will you not always need a third party?
There's a methodology to actually have your own lab and have it certified and have technicians who operate it in a function that would be deemed, in a sense, controlled or arm's length.
So Health Canada...
Yeah, and it physically is in the back portion of our building, which is relatively closer than New Brunswick.
Well, so what you're saying is that a grower like yourself doesn't have to have a third party all the way through. It can eventually have its own.
Yeah, and you know, that speaks to an intent we have, which is a large scale. It is not free to answer the clipboard questions of Health Canada.
No.
There are a lot of questions, and so to have people suitably skilled to do that takes some overhead.
Do you see somewhere down the road, like, you know, they've done this in mining, they used to be able to do that, and all of a sudden, no, you have to have a third party, and you have to have a third party endorsement, and it has to be, I almost think that that's where they're going.
I suspect somebody falling out of a helicopter in, was it Indonesia? Might somehow be related.
He might not even be in that helicopter. They're making that movie now.
But I imagine if someone fell out of a helicopter in the Health Canada world, we'd probably be able to continue down a path.
You see a lot of changes there.
I don't know. I think one of the presentations, a couple of them referenced where the evolution of what we can offer, because as people can imagine, the fact that we have to take the stalk, leaf, and everything but the flower and process it through a machine that destroys it so that we can suitably have disposed of it so as to comply with the rules versus creating derivative products which have benefit can be, these rules will evolve, we're quite certain, when and how. There are a number of views presented.
Good. Sorry, I dominated. Who's next?
And then I did want to have some private questions if people have any.
Okay, how about one more question and you can have some private ones. Anybody else?
So I appreciate the audience. Come back next year. I promise the presentation won't be constrained.
There is one gentleman. Because you have some time, that's all I'm doing.
Yep.
Could you just very quickly say exactly the product or service that your company sells? I have absolutely no idea.
Okay, sorry about that. So TWEED is licensed under the new regulations to plant, produce, and ship dried marijuana products. And so we were, I believe, the 162nd company to submit our application. We're the 5th company to receive our license. Our initial license was issued to us in late November, which allowed us to plant the initial product, and the final attribute of that license was issued January 27th, which allowed us to then also sell the product. The company is based in Smiths Falls, Ontario, which is about 3 hours east of Toronto, 1 hour outside of Ottawa, and we operate out of a facility that's about 180,000 square feet, 168,000 square feet of area dedicated to production of marijuana. In the England.
Good, you're in a great place.
What is the size of the Canadian market? Was it medical marijuana?
I believe your comment, I can't, given where we are, give an estimate of size, what we're constrained on, but I thought that some of the views expressed earlier were very interesting, where the discussion was about the medical versus if there was another market, and what happens to price and brand in the transition of value. But you know, there's so many views out there on how large it is in the medical field and how it changes value under legalization. I wouldn't want to speculate. And I'd love to speculate, actually, but I'm disallowed.
Okay. Bruce, can I answer some questions outside? Just Paul, if you have any questions?
Did you have one?
Yeah, really a follow-up on the question of mold and analytical labs. Given the recent issue with irradiation and the prospect that implies perhaps some mold issues or other biological issues, would you consider publishing on your website the actual results from your internal testing and your external testing, rather than the public just reading in the newspaper that you've taken some action suggesting there's a problem?
Yeah. It's a good idea, because one of the reasons people now don't believe it now that our stock's traded, but one of the reasons we initially listed is we thought that the value to this sector of being audited by companies like Deloitte and transparent was that it would make things more trustworthy and comfortable. And the reason we wanted to do that is very early on in the process we did a survey of who is the real influencer in the buying decision. Is it the actual patient or is it someone else? And it came back time and again through the methods we used that in fact, principal decision maker was likely the child of or the niece or nephew of the likely patient, at least in the first phase of the market. And their comfort with the openness of the business was very important. And so your point's probably a good one. It would be consistent with what we've wanted to do. I will say that the events unfold so quickly, sometimes we don't have time to think about who we are and how we present ourselves, and that might be more consistent.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good job, man. Okay.